everyone, and thanks for listening today. This is the RX Daily Dose. Today's episode is being recorded on Friday, October 25th, and I'm your host, Ian Pranagoni. We update this podcast every week for healthcare providers, medical professionals, and anyone who has an interest in drug updates. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on all of your favorite podcast platforms and social media, including iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and Instagram. All links can be found in the show notes below. Also, next week, I'll be attending the Academy of Managed Care Pharmacy Conference in Baltimore, so if you're in the area or attending as well, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to connect in person. Let's get right into it with updates from the FDA this week. On October 21st, the FDA approved the first triple combination therapy available to treat patients with the most common cystic fibrosis mutation coming from Vertex Pharmaceuticals. Trikafta is approved for patients 12 years and older with cystic fibrosis who have at least one F508 deletion mutation in the cystic fibrosis transmembrane conductance regulator gene, that's CFTR for short, which is estimated to represent 90% of the cystic fibrosis population. That's roughly 27,000 patients in the United States. Currently available therapies that target the defective protein are treatment options for some patients with cystic fibrosis, but many patients have mutations that are ineligible for treatment. Cystic fibrosis is a rare, progressive, inherited disease in which thick, sticky mucus builds up in organs, including the digestive system and, most seriously, the lungs. It is often fatal in early adulthood, with patients developing severe respiratory and digestive problems, as well as other complications such as infections and diabetes. Trikafta increased the amount of air patients could expel from their lungs in 1 second by an average of 14%. The efficacy of Trikafta in patients with cystic fibrosis aged 12 years and older was demonstrated in 2 trials. The first trial was a 24-week, randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial in 403 patients who had an F508 deletion mutation and a mutation on the second allele that results in either no CFTR protein or a CFTR protein that is not responsive to Kalydeco or Symdeko. The second trial was a 4-week randomized double-blind active control trial in 107 patients who had 2 identical F508 deletion mutations. In each trial, the study looked at increases in the percent predicted forced expiratory volume in 1 second, known as ppFEV1, which is an established measure of cystic fibrosis lung disease progression. Trikafta increased the percent predicted FEV1 in both trials. In the first trial, it increased 14% from baseline compared to placebo. In the second trial, it increased 10% from baseline compared to Symdeko. The safety profile of Trikafta is based on data from the 510 cystic fibrosis patients in the 2 trials. The safety profile was generally similar across all subgroups of patients. Serious adverse drug reactions that occurred more frequently in patients receiving Trikafta compared to placebo were rash and influenza events. The most common adverse drug reactions included headaches, upper respiratory tract infections, abdominal pains, diarrhea, increased liver enzymes, and increased blood creatine phosphokinase. The prescribing information for Trikafta includes warnings related to elevated liver function tests, that's transaminases and bilirubin, as well as use at the same time with other products that are inducers or inhibitors of another liver enzyme called cytochrome P450 3A4. Almost all insurers, if they cover specialty products, will cover this product and the others in the class on the same tier. All products on the market that target the mutation are made by Vertex Pharmaceuticals and are all considered specialty. The FDA also this week approved a 4% minocycline topical foam growing by brand name Amzeeq by Foamier Pharmaceuticals to treat inflammatory lesions of non-nodular moderate to severe acne in adults and children aged 9 years and older. It's the first topical minocycline formulation approved by the FDA, the company noted in a news release announcing approval. Until now, minocycline has not been available as a topical medication, primarily due to its instability in traditional topical formulations. Amzeeq utilizes the company's proprietary molecule-stabilizing technology platform to effectively deliver minocycline in a foam-based vehicle and is applied once daily. Minocycline topical foam was evaluated in 3 12-week multi-center randomized double-blind vehicle-controlled phase 3 studies that involved 2,418 patients aged 9 years or older who had moderate to severe acne vulgaris. All 3 studies showed statistically significant improvement in acne with topical minocycline versus the vehicle for the co-primary endpoint of absolute reduction of inflammatory lesions. Minocycline topical foam was well tolerated. No treatment-related serious adverse events were reported. The most common adverse events were headache reported in 3% of patients who were treated with minocycline foam versus 2% who were treated with the other vehicle. I don't anticipate any changes in treatment guidelines for acne or changes in how prescribing for acne treatment is happening now, as there are multiple gels, creams, tablets, and capsules on the market for acne that come in generic form. Also this week, the diabetes drug dapagliflozin, known as Farxiga, has been approved by the FDA to reduce the risk of heart failure hospitalization among adults with type 2 diabetes who also have cardiovascular disease or multiple cardiovascular risk factors. The approval is based on results of the DECLARE TIMI 58 trial. The trial included more than 17,000 patients with type 2 diabetes who were followed for a median of 4 years. The study demonstrated a 27% reduction in the rate of hospitalization for heart failure among participants assigned the SGLT2 inhibitor Farxiga versus those assigned placebo. Farxiga is approved in the U.S. as monotherapy and as part of combination therapy to improve glycemic control for patients with type 2 diabetes. However, the FDA and the company are exploring its use among adults without diabetes. Now, Farxiga has a lengthy history with the FDA. Back in September, the FDA granted fast-track designation to Farxiga for reducing the risk of cardiovascular death or worsening heart failure among adults with heart failure with reduced or preserved ejection fraction. The designation was based on 2 different trials, DAPA-HF and DELIVER. In DAPA-HF, Farxiga added to standard therapy for heart failure was associated with reduced risk for worsening heart failure and cardiovascular death for patients with heart failure with and without diabetes. In August, the FDA granted fast-track designation for Farxiga for use in patients with or without diabetes who have chronic kidney disease to delay the progression of renal failure and to prevent cardiovascular and renal death. There are multiple SGLT2 competitors on the market, so it's likely we'll see some shifts in formularies come 2020, with some insurers to prefer those with better data to back them up. The FDA also approved Janssen's ustekinumab, going by brand name Stelara, for the treatment of adult patients with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis after clinical trials demonstrated the drug helped patients achieve clinical remission. The approval is based on the Phase 3 UNIFY study that showed after 8 weeks of taking a single intravenous dose of Stelara, patients saw clinical remission in a significantly greater proportion of UC patients. Not only did treatment with Stelara bring about clinical remission for ulcerative colitis, it also helped a significantly greater proportion of patients maintain that remission. Ulcerative colitis is a debilitating inflammatory bowel disease in adults and children with limited therapeutic management options for many patients. It is estimated that close to 1 million patients with ulcerative colitis live in the United States. Stelara, Janssen said, is the first and only approved biologic therapy for ulcerative colitis that targets the interleukin 12 and IL-23 cytokines. The IL-12 and IL-23 cytokines have been shown to play an important role in inflammatory and immune responses. The Unified trial includes an initial induction study and was followed by a maintenance study 8 weeks later, where patients received subcutaneous injections of Stelara every 8 weeks for 44 weeks. In the induction study, 19% of patients receiving Stelara achieved clinical remission in 8 weeks. Janssen also noted that Stelara provided rapid relief of symptoms, as 58% of patients experienced a clinical response at week 8. In the maintenance study, 45% of patients who received Stelara remained in remission after 1 year. Stelara also helped patients achieve clinical remission without the use of corticosteroids, the company noted. At the end of the first year, 43% of patients treated with Stelara were in clinical remission and not receiving steroids, Janssen said. In addition to the latest approval from the FDA, Stelara has been approved as a treatment for adults living with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis, adolescent patients with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis, adults with active psoriatic arthritis, and adults with moderately to severely active Crohn's disease. There are, from my count, 6 biologics that can target ulcerative colitis, and each one of them have different mechanisms of action. With the approval of Stelara for plaque psoriasis and Crohn's, you might see added coverage as a preferred option over other products in the future. And finally this week, an article I read regarding the U.S. Pharmacopoeia, and just as some background for those that may not know, the U.S. Pharmacopoeia sets quality, purity, strength, and identity standards for drugs, food ingredients, and dietary supplements. They publish these standards in their primary reference text, that's the USPNF, and they develop USP reference standards, also known as physical standards. These are used by manufacturers to test and are enforced by the FDA under U.S. law. USP notified stakeholders last month that they were postponing the official effective dates of revisions to Chapter 795 and 797, along with new Chapter 825. Formal appeals to provisions in these chapters were filed by chapters of the International Academy of Compounding Pharmacists, the National Community Pharmacists Association, the American Pharmacists Association, and more than 30 state pharmacy associations also expressed concerns. According to USP, the currently official chapters of 795 and 797 will remain in place in the interim. General Chapter 800 is not subject to appeals, according to USP, and will not have its official date delayed. General Chapter 800 is scheduled to go into effect December 1st, 2019. And that's all I have for this week. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I'll include all links and resources in the show notes below, so please go back and check those out too. Please connect with me on any of your social media platforms and give me feedback on what you listened to today. I'd love to know what you thought about the episode. And as always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Music by Joseph McDade.